Old pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs, redemption songs.
A bandolier of emerald isles, one poet called the Caribbean, circling the waste of two continents. One speck on that bandolier is Curacao. The harbour master is what you might call the new Caribbean man, mixed heritage and history, and speaking 5 languages.
Ja, goedemorgen meneer Diepring. Nou best, gaan met u. Oh ja, prima.
The Dutch have been here since 1634. The head of state is still formally the Queen of the Netherlands. The links with the past are everywhere. They used to call the Caribbean the Dutch Canal. The ships of the Dutch Empire carried cargo, not cannons, and that spirit of trade, anything with anyone, is still the hallmark of their influence there. Commerce is Curaçao's lifeblood. The best thing that happened to us, one man told me, is that we've no resources. We have to live on our wits. Of course, the Dutch connection and their offshore tax status help. But there's something very modern about the way they've created a society out of 50 nationalities. The floating market where the Venezuelans come to trade is completely cosmopolitan. The staff of the bank reflects Curaçao's astonishing ethnic mix.
My grandparents are from German descendant, Jewish descendant, Colombian descendant, and African descendant, as a matter of fact.
My parents born here. My grandfather is from Lebanon, of Greek Orthodox descent, and my grandmother is Venezuelan from German descent. And I'm here.
My mother is from Jewish and African descent, and my father is from Sweden and local descent.
My mother is from Curacao, my father from Trinidad, and goes back to India.
I think I can go all the way back to Africa when they brought the slaves here to Curacao, and those are my great-great-great-grandparents. So I'm local.
On a shady veranda in Old Harbor, Jamaica, lives a woman of 100 years old who's another example of this Caribbean mosaic. This is the house where my father was born. Our family was part English, part African, part Portuguese Jew, even some say a little East Indian.
Now this one is the...
My Aunt Jerry was a teacher then, and incredibly, she's still a teacher today.
About how old you feel? About 60?
Younger than that. Not younger than 60, younger than 100.
You had a good time for the birthday?
Yes, but I don't feel 100.
And you're still teaching school?
Yes, I teach and I beat and I bowl and I score. What is the sentence made up of? Say subject, and predicate. The subject is usually a noun or pronoun. And then a verb.
Right.
Now, anybody can make a sentence here. Stand up.
This desire to learn was deeply ingrained in the Caribbean psyche by the British.
Morning.
I went to school late this morning.
Take another one. I love my parents.
Watching my aunt at work, I remember my own school days here. and how the teachers used to drum into us the idea that education would be our main route to success.
Study art.
That I can pass my examination.
That I can pass my examination. Examination.
Right.
What they were less clear about was how we could use this education in later life. Teaching facilities for kids like these are still primitive and the methods old-fashioned. And the question about what happens next is, if anything, even harder to answer.
Very good. It's a very Caribbean scene, this. The passion for education, the eagerness to learn. But surely it all has to be for something. What are the options for these young people? I mean, will history allow them to be themselves and survive in the modern world? They've thrown off the inhibitions of colonialism. But what are they to do with their hard-won freedom?
Sadly, one of the things many people do, as I did, is to make a career outside the Caribbean. Munia owns this smart dress shop in Martinique because she became a top model in New York and Paris.
That looked like a Bacroix from Martinique.
Even the success of her business in Martinique depends on somewhere else. It has a rich clientele because her island's economy is massively supported by France. Her route to wealth began at an airline desk in Paris.
I am hostess at Air France with my bad English, but I am hostess. And at Orly Sud, Mr. Givenchy came and said to me, "Oh, what did you do front that desk? You have to be model because you have the paw. Vous avez le port. You have the neck, you have the face and the body for that. Visit me at Avenue Georges V and show me your walk, your walking." And I say, "Oh, okay." Put some dress on me, some dress from the couture, and I walk very simple and very quietly, you know. And he said, "That's very good. You have to walk with me."
Because she was beautiful, her color was no bar.
I love my color. Black is a beautiful and wonderful color. You have a lot of black people, very top, very intelligent, and very successful.
Her story is a sort of 20th century fairy tale. The engaging thing about Munia is the undisguised pleasure she gets from having achieved all this on her own. But is it a Caribbean success or a French one? Even the pool is an Arabian dream.
That swimming pool, I see it at Oman, and I love it, I like it, and I copy for put in Martinique, in my country. I am the first black girl to do the covers for Harper's Bazaar. The first time it's me. Is that not incredible?
Munia, of course, is 1 in a million. The other 999,000 have no chance of that sort of salvation. I remember coming down here when I lived in Kingston. It was poor then, and it's poorer now. For these people, sheer survival is what matters. It's a puzzle. Colonialism has gone. Independence governments of right and left have had their turns in power, each with their own brand of solutions. And the whole process has passed the majority of the ordinary people by. Rastafarians would say that they're still suffering, still in captivity, and that this is Babylon. And for the poor, the traditional escape route remains religion. The people of these colonies used to depend on sugar and Britain. Now they can look to neither for salvation. This island, Antigua, was once covered with sugar estates. This factory once processed nearly all its sugar. By the mid-60s, it was losing its British owners nearly $500,000 a year, so they closed it down. The sugar industry on the island is now finished. The land no longer supports its people. This does. All over the Caribbean, island economies are kept going by plane loads of tourists dropping in for a fortnight from America and Europe. It's become the region's main earner of foreign currency. There's nothing wrong, of course, with people coming here for a dream holiday, and the money they bring keeps some people in work. The problem is the way tourism distorts reality, obliging people to produce themselves for tourist consumption. In Antigua, you can see writ large almost every dilemma which these small islands have been grappling with since independence. Every Sunday, the congregation of the Salvation Army Church includes Mr. V.C. Bird, a one-time leader of the Sugar Union who's been Prime Minister of Antigua most of the time since the British went. The rest of the time, he and his sons wheel and deal on the country's behalf, in the course of which, some say, a percentage ends up in private accounts belonging to the Birds or their friends. This is Ivor Bird, and behind him, Vere Bird Jr. They're unabashed by charges of corruption. Mr. Bird Sr. stoutly defends his family record.
We discarded sugar, and we built hotels all over the island. We have 365 beaches in Antigua, and almost on every beach you'll find a hotel there, of a good standard too. And today, tourism is our chief industry. So that provides the employment for the people.
One charge is that they raised $11 million to build a runway that should have cost barely $7.
We wanted an airport for the planes to come, and Britain said no. So we had to find a way. And we went and we built until we got the airport long enough for a jet to come in. And Pan American saw us what we were doing, said, if you can build the airport long enough, the day you finish, we put a jet into Antigua. And lo and behold, the day we finished, there was the Pan American jet coming in.
Then there was the British Airways deal. In exchange for exclusive rights to fly passengers from Britain, BA paid 1% of their operating profits into a special account at the local Swiss-American bank. Meanwhile, the majority of Antigua's 150,000 inhabitants still live in poverty. Their intake of protein lower than anywhere else in the Caribbean except Haiti. This little journey tells you a lot. A third of the population live in varying degrees of poverty in the houses across the swamp over there. This bypass cost £10 million, and it leads to a hotel that costs 3 or 4 times as much, depending, of course, on who you talk to. The Bird said this would be a good deal for Antiguans. The Royal Antigua would be their hotel. The profits would stay on the island. But it hasn't worked out. Construction costs soared. Many rooms remained empty. When I was there, they were trying to sell it at about a third of what it had cost them to date. A small island like Antigua doesn't have much of an opposition party. What it has is Tim Hector, a journalist who's run a lonely and on occasions hazardous campaign against government mistakes, like the building of the Royal Antigua.
You have this horrendous situation where a small country is supposed to have invested 90 million in a project, which it then turns over to foreign management to manage, and then it is now selling for about 1/3 of the original price. The national debt, of course, ballooned upwards with the 90 million having been expended in it. And now that it is being sold for 30 million, one wonders where the remaining 60 million plus interest will come from. Well, that is the sort of thing in which the government of Antigua has got. It has accepted these wild schemes to do things and just gone along with them.
Tim Hector's paper, The Outlet, has tried to track every deal the Byrd government has made. The most dramatic one was the claim that it allowed arms to be shipped from Israel through Antigua to South American drug barons. The scandal hit the world headlines and provoked a public inquiry. They called in 2 British barristers to get to the truth. One issue was the money paid into Vere Byrd Jr.'s account by an Israeli called Morris Safati, which Byrd said was for legal services.
What about your records of your bills from Safati? The bills that you sent to Safati for your legal work. Okay. Can you produce any bill that you've rendered to Morris Safati?
No, I cannot.
No bill at all that you have possession of that you've rendered to him over the years?
The inquiry was chaired by Louis Blom Cooper. The questions finally needled Mr. Byrd.
Where is this corruption that you're trying to lead to is going? I am the loser.
You see, Mr. Byrd, you are going to be the winner.
The courtroom in the capital, St. John, and television viewers in shacks around the country had never seen anything like it. In small islands, the leading politicians wield as much power as the planters they've replaced. Poverty isn't a good basis for democracy. Those who are on the survival line look to charismatic leaders rather than political systems. People like Jennifer are loyal to old V.C. Byrd, whatever he's done.
Mr. Byrd run the country good. Because all of them that run it don't run it good as him. When other rest running this, we cannot even eat bread. But this one now I can eat bread. Mr. Byrd, I can eat bread now.
Jennifer's husband, Somali, earns money carving ornaments to sell to tourists. It's one of the industry's few spin-offs, but it doesn't earn much.
At times, it's a little rough. Food is our #1 priority, right? it's all in the man. If you want to live good, no matter how rough it is, you will live.
How rough depends on a fickle industry, much affected by fashion, recession, or bad weather.
Nobody's buying the carving today because it's raining, so everybody going back to their room and stuff like that.
Jennifer's skill is plaiting hair in the Rasta style.
I charge $30 for the whole head, and to do a couple on the side, $2 a strand, and if they want like 5, it's $10. I don't already have a job because I like going out, meet the tourists. I'm friendly, so I like to meet them too and make friends, show them different places to go and eat, and good food and stuff like that.
It's true that tourism enables Jennifer to live, but not much of the tourist money trickles down here. Her family, like many on the island, lives in one room without running water. All her hopes focus on her children.
I want my children to have manners to people. I want them to be friendly and want them to go to school that they could learn to read and write. And I want them to be a nice girl and a nice boy. Well, I would like them to become a teacher or a nurse.
You want them to become a stewardess?
And Dest, I want you to become a stewardess.
Morning, what can I do for you?
I'd like 2 eggs over easy, please.
2 eggs over easy, all right. You like to try any of the potatoes? Beautiful.
Please.
Hash brown?
Beautiful.
Okay. So I got 2 eggs over easy, 1 Spanish and 1 Western. And
To get one of the privileged jobs for locals in the mainstream of tourism means learning quite different skills.
And pancakes, lovely pancakes with different type of syrup.
Mimic men, the great West Indian writer V.S. Naipaul called them. This is what a service industry means. Tim Hector finds it depressing. Most of the money tourists bring in is spent not on Antiguans, but providing services for other tourists.
You have a very real problem when you look at Antigua. If you say 150,000 tourists come to Antigua every year, and the population is 80,000, then you're saying that most of the services in Antigua do not exist for the local population, it exists for the tourists. Where does a citizen fit in his own tourist society? He becomes a kind of second or third class citizen in his own, because whatever exists in the society exists more for the tourists. He is incidental. If one was going to use tourism as a means of accumulation to do other things, then it would make a lot of sense. But when it becomes an end in itself, what are you doing? You're producing a nation of waitresses, busboys, etc. The management is all left to people coming from outside of the country, and there is no sense of achievement. And when you have a society that doesn't have a sense of its own achievement, it can't go too far.
The man who owns this boat, Lord Shortshirt or Shorty, is the greatest calypso singer on the island. Now he entertains day trippers.
How you enjoy your day, okay? What about you? How you enjoy your day? Would you do it again? Next time you're around, you come, we'll give you a special, innit?
Antigua survives now with tourism, 37 luxury hotels, 35 of which are foreign-owned, and the 2 that are not foreign-owned are owned by the government of Antigua and are foreign-managed. So that everything remains outside of us, and that dependency is steadily fostered, whereas we are claiming to be independent.
On a patch of land which once grew sugar, I came across a remarkable project and a remarkable man. If you want to know what independence means, ask Carmona Samuel. He used to drive a bus between his village and St. John. One day he realized that if he could only build a dam, he could cultivate a lot of the unused land. So he started saving 50 cents out of every dollar he earned to hire a digger for a few hours on Saturdays.
I try to hire, some earth remover to do a little at a time. I've been spending all the money I could get my hands on for the past, I would say, 15 years.
Single-handed, he started bringing fallow land back into cultivation, but he desperately needed his dam to get through the dry spells. He had no grants, no help, but the dam was eventually ready. All but the vital spillway, and that was expensive.
I applied to the Ministry of Agriculture for some chipping and some sand to build the spillway. March came, April came, and I was still waiting on the chipping and the sand from the Ministry of Agriculture.
More months passed, and they were into the hurricane season. Then disaster struck.
We had Hugo, and one shower of rain, and the whole thing, all the earth that is between here, between the water and the wall, was eroded. And the water just teared out all the earth, and I started all over again.
Finally, Carmona had rebuilt the wall and was at last ready to start irrigating his land. The extraordinary thing is that he has no rights over this land. He's doing this because he feels someone must.
Wilder, open the line down there for me.
While we were in Antigua, rains came that exceeded even Carmona's wildest dreams and filled his dam to the top for the first time.
Go ahead. I'm really happy indeed that 2 days ago this was more or less empty, and today it's filled with about 13 to 14 million gallons of water.
This is the market in St. John where Carmona brings his produce to sell. Surprisingly, none of the islands is now self-sufficient in food. Antigua is the biggest importer of food in the Eastern Caribbean. Once it lived off what it grew. But since independence, agriculture has petered out. It's now just 5% of the national product.
I always wonder about independence because I hadn't seen much to actually say that Antigua is truly an independent country. Because if a nation cannot feed itself, it could never be independent.
If you are a foreign businessman who is bankrupt, condemn and condone your profession, spells disaster, pack up and...
Carmona's anger has led him to become a calypso singer.
For in this little nation,
he's now called the Calypso Farmer.
Investors and politicians sit around the table and discuss deals to swindle. So hurry up and come, you'll survive a total breakdown. You will get anything you want from them. Come and stay with the time and when you pull apart.
The power that the British had some years ago is into the hands of a family and a few individuals who, in my opinion, move power from family to family and not really in the interest of the country.
You're not compelled to have the money to invest in this country. They will give you a subsidy once you pull a party.
Carmona's cynicism is shared by Tim Hector, but he hopes that now at last things are going to change.
I think we are at the end of something. I think the Bloom Cooper inquiry is going to mark a definite watershed in the history of Antigua. We have to set up principles of probity, principles by which we can have some relations between government and governed.
But his newspaper articles have exposed many raw nerves, and some people have hit back.
A bomb was thrown in this house while I was away. I was out of the country. My wife and children were at home. And we did post bodyguards outside the house for about a couple of weeks during that period of time. You know, I ruffled not a few feathers at all levels, and particularly the top levels of society. And there are people who probably from time to time get angry and say, would no one rid me of this terrible man?
Tim Hector hasn't yet been personally attacked, but he has suffered tragically. 2 years ago, his wife was murdered. Someone has been convicted, but Hector still has his suspicions about what lay behind the murder.
I was in England when I heard of my wife's murder. I think her murder is linked to stories that we carried about drug barons in the country. And I thought they felt they would probably serve a warning in a certain kind of way to me. And she happened to be the unfortunate victim of that terrible set of circumstances. But it was a grievous loss. I mean, she was not just a wife in the normal sense of that word. She was somebody who was we were in active partnership, doing quite a lot of things together.
Tim Hector works on alone, still exposing dishonesty and malpractice. He's determined not to be frightened off by his wife's murder.
When I got back off the plane and landed here, for a brief moment it occurred to me that perhaps I should just go back to teaching school or something, teaching at a university or something, that would be better. But it lasted for maybe about an hour.
Once the gem of the Caribbean.
Tonight, Carmona Samuel is in a local hotel.
So again, corruption and nepotism, ordeal for her, all because of misrule and shady characters.
But it isn't only local corruption. Small islands are under great pressure from outside. On their own, their political systems aren't strong enough to withstand the drug cartels and foreign entrepreneurs who bear down on them.
Greed and deception taking us down this slope. This might be progress, but certainly not home. This nation is battered by...
Nearly every one of these lovely islands has formal independence, but in a deeper sense, they're now more dependent than ever.